My name is Scott Richardson, and I worked with Maggie Lee at the Northfield News for 18 years. She hired me, and we worked in a variety of roles during that time. Maggie was an original and a consummate journalist, a community journalist. She took her work seriously. She was a dogged reporter. She had a strong editorial voice. She managed a spirited editorial page where at the time it was kind of the public square where there was an exchange of ideas, and if you really wanted something to rise to the level of community conversation, that's where it had to be. She was a product of this community, and as we know, she was an only child. She never married, and I think the readers of the Northfield News became her extended family. She had a great appreciation for community, community cohesion, and she nurtured that in many, many ways with what she reported on and the kinds of features that she invited into the newspaper. Stories, she did defy the circadian rhythm. She certainly marched to her own drummer in that regard. When I was first entered the news, her habit was to come in about 10 or 11 in the morning on a Monday. She would assign stories the week before, but then we were to deliver them during the day on Monday. She would sort through the mail and mark up copy that had to be just typeset. She would edit deep into the night, often going home at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And then on Tuesday, which was our deadline day and pay stub day, she would reemerge about noon and work through the night again to Wednesday morning. And that's when often we would come in and find Maggie at her desk sorting through things for the next week's edition. But it was a mountain of paper, and then a plate of half-eaten food that was there, which was kind of her ritual after pasting the paper up. She didn't drive, but she got more places than I did. She was masterful at finding people to chauffeur her here and there. When you're a newspaper editor back then, you would often get tickets to, say, the Chanhassen Dinner Theater, and you were invited to go, so you would review the production but she always had 2 tickets, so she would invite someone with a car to take her, and then she would reward them with an evening at the theater. So she had a sense of history, and of course she was key to the founding of the Northfield Historical Society, but she was a product of Northfield. She admired innovation and progress, but she also had a deep affection and understanding of the traditions and where we came from and how those values needed to be nurtured and respected. And so history was always a big part of the lens through which she looked at a lot of what was happening. And I think why Maggie and a lot of us thought we were chronicling history while we were putting out a weekly newspaper. It's easy to caricature her, but she was a professional and took her work very, very seriously. And it wasn't about awards. I mean, she got many and applied for them all, but it was about doing the job. She had her eccentricities, but it was never really about her. I think it was just Maggie being authentic, and it was Maggie being Maggie. But those eccentricities, I think, made her endearing and relatable to people throughout Northfield. Well, the purple thing was interesting because I did ask her about that once, and it became her signature color. We all know that. But I said, how did that come about? And she said, well, it really wasn't her idea. She said, I wasn't necessarily wedded to wearing that as a costume day in, day out. She wore it a couple of times, and then people started commenting, where's the purple? And, you know, she had that famous Along Division Street column, so she was out and about much of the week, going up and down Division and doing in and out of shops, and customers as well as business owners would see her. It got to the point where in her mind people were kind of expecting it, so that she accommodated by, you know, playing to her audience. But it was never, in my mind, Maggie, there wasn't a self-consciousness about what she did. It was Maggie being Maggie, and she didn't set out to create this character. It's a little bit two-dimensional in our memory of her, but you know, she was smart. She was a good reporter, fiercely loyal to Northfield. She promoted open government. I mean, she was tenacious about that we needed to be the ears and eyes of the public at these local councils and school board meetings. I mean, that was our role, open government, transparency. And she really had protected the environment. You know, she was very forward thinking about that, and it took courage in a small town to do what she did, and she took tough editorial stands and didn't apologize. And then the fact that she was a woman doing that in 1960 and beyond, that was an anomaly. You know, she was plowing new ground, and probably some formidable opposition to not only her stands, but also the fact that she was a woman taking those stands and having such a wide influence in the community in that way. You know, she embodied the best of community journalism at the time. Not every town had what we had in the Northfield News. A lot of it was run by people that were more business-oriented or printing people, and it was transactional for them. This was the way I could make a living, this is the way I could make some money. But Maggie had the heart and the spirit of a journalist who really wanted to nurture the community and create community cohesion. Had strong opinions, but in the end it was what was best for the community. So.